Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Luke Hunt, and this is Beyond the Mekong podcast with the Diplomat. And with me today is Dr. Sawana Gauntlet, who is another well-known personality in Cambodia. She's the director and founder of Wildlife Alliance. Sawana, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Luke.
How is Cambodia shaping up now compared with 20 years ago when it comes to protecting the rainforests and the wildlife that goes with it?
So very clearly, the country is bounds ahead as to where it was in the year 2000, and that is mainly due to our work at Wildlife Alliance. Mm-hmm. When I arrived, there was wildlife being sold everywhere, on markets, on sidewalks, in people's homes. There were bears waiting for their next paw to be cut off for VIP bear soup before the golf tournaments. There were monkeys being kept in bags on rooftops to get their brains eaten alive for VIP dinners. And this goes on and on. I had never seen anything this bad. So I thought that I had to do something about it. And I didn't really hesitate. So I went to the government, several departments, and asked them if they needed our help. I went to the Office of National Parks. I went to the General Department of Nature Conservation and Preservation. And I said, your country is fraught with wildlife trade and deforestation. Our specialty at Wildlife Alliance is to help stop the deforestation and stop the wildlife trade. Are you interested in our services? Mm-hmm. Well, contrary to my expectation, they opened their arms and welcomed me with open arms because their frustration was that the government had just required a countrywide forestry reform. But they were not trained to do that forestry reform. So they welcomed anybody bringing in skills to do it, and of course funding. Mm-hmm. And they had a very interesting explanation as to why things were not working right now in Cambodia.
Which was
a lot of NGOs came in after the war, a lot of NGOs studying the wildlife, studying the forest, but never taking action.
Right.
Whereas you need our services, we work from day one with you, we buy the equipment, build the stations, train the rangers, help recruit them, live with them, and go out and get order back.
When you say action, does that include gun-toting rangers and people running around rainforests pointing guns and...
It includes a normal group of rangers as it would be in Africa, as it would be in the United States. It's a group of rangers, and it's the landscape of the cardamoms where I work is so big,
right.
You need a lot of ranger stations.
The cardamoms is one of the last pristine rainforests, not only in Cambodia, but certainly the region.
Exactly. In the region, by the way, that they now call Borneo Mekong. So it's a basin of Borneo Mekong. So each station has 4 judicial police officers of the Ministry of Environment that are the officers in charge of leading the station and doing all of the judicial police officer documents to the court. All the penalties, all the prison charges, all the arrests, all the communication with the judges and the prosecutor. They are the ones leading the operations. Behind them, you have a group of sometimes 6 Royal Gendarme Khmer, which are what we call military police because they do have weapons. And they are the ones ensuring the security. But also, a little-known fact, they are the only department in the government that has power to arrest rogue military. This is something that was started when the United Nations troops came. Most of the civil crimes and forest crimes were done by the military.
Is that still the case?
Pretty much.
How much has that improved since you arrived?
Well, it's improved because of the structure that we've put in these stations. We're responsible for logistics. So everything that has to do with hiring, doing contracts, what people are accountable for, these are called counterparts, the bonuses that they receive, the food that they receive, health care. We decided that soldiers and rangers were not paid enough. So of course, they need to do side businesses. But in our case, they're very well taken care of. They have leaf time at the end of the month, and their leaf time is paid for. And then we organize all the leaf time to make sure that at least one unit is in the station all the time. There are no such things as no stations with any rangers ever.
Right. So essentially your mission is to protect what is already there.
Yeah.
And you've successfully done that over the last 23 years. I mean, if we were to measure the amount of rainforest in the Cardamons now compared with 20 years ago, and nobody would doubt the level of deforestation that has occurred across this country. But if we were to measure the Cardamons now versus 23 years ago, it would be pretty much the same, or
it would be lower. It would be lower
right.
Because thankfully, thanks to the stations being on vigil 24/9, 24/7. Most of the patrols now are done at night by ambush to keep it more effective. And every month they give us the number of kilometers they've done, number of ambushes, how many animals they've saved, how many wildlife traps have been dismantled, how many guns confiscated.
How much of the missing rainforests is due to large illegal logging on a large scale, and how much of it is due to pilfering by locals? What is the difference between the two?
I think that's a very good question. And then there's a third category, which I'll come up to in a second. Illegal logging is kind of a thing of the past. All of the specialties that are very expensive have been logged, selectively logged.
Right.
Then, if a military network, for example, and the kingpin who heads it, is interested in a certain area, and we're talking about huge areas, his technique is cut all the trees, cut the first trees that sell well, right? Then cut the construction trees that they sell as construction wood. Then cut everything else for charcoal, which are sold in Phnom Penh. Then they burn everything to clear the land and sell it.
Right.
So whom do they sell it to? They sell it to the barons. And the barons then put out a request to central government saying, I want this land. And as you can see, it's completely degraded. So there's no environmental protection problem here. It's already everything's all killed.
The land is ruined.
Land is ruined.
I want to develop it.
That's right.
And the people who are developing it were responsible for the land being ruined in the first place.
That's right. But now that has changed. What is happening much more often is that the barons will hire workers from other states. Because the states of Kokong, for example, they know very well they're not supposed to do that.
Right.
And if they get caught, they'll go to prison. So workers from other states who come with chainsaws at night, try to clear the land, with also bulldozers, excavators, tractors. Caught red-handed, they go to court, the equipment is seized, and the rampant deforestation is stopped.
The Cardamons has been securitized as a carbon credit asset product through the RED scheme.
Yeah.
And it's a complicated beast which has been widely criticised for all sorts of reasons. How do you view RED? And I understand that there has been controversy with Wildlife Alliance, but we'll get to that shortly. But how do you view RED and Vera, the verification processing, I guess, which is required by companies to gain those carbon credits?
So everything started pretty much in 2019. We have a technical partner, Wildlife Works, Carbon, to determine the exact boundaries where it's called the accounting, the carbon accounting area, where standing trees from that area are the ones that can sell VERs, Verified Emission Reductions.
Right.
And that area it's true, it's very technical, it's very complicated. We do statistical dispersion plots, and we go and test all the plots to measure the trees to see how much carbon there really is. So there's a system to do that. Every card has an ID card, and every plot has a report. So that's done over a period of at least 9 months, very, very long. And we send those measurements, called biomass measurements, to our partner who does the algorithms to decide what is the avoided deforestation from this standing forest as compared to the national FREL.
Right.
So our method, we follow the national FREL. And we've done that since 2019. We had our first validation and verification VCS with Vera. And Vera did a great job, examined what the auditors had done, and they gave their okay. So we passed December 2019. And in those days, it wasn't as complicated as today because there were no opponents. There were no people disputing the algorithms.
Right. Now we are heading into
Yes.
even further complicated
Right.
territory. My understanding from writing about RED many years ago is that a reasonable comparison would be a stock market. Your asset is the rainforest.
Yeah.
You have it audited. You have it maintained. There would be international analysts with broking houses that would examine the asset and make sure that, well, basically that there's no pilfering, that the trees aren't being cut down and that it is all maintained properly. Why does it get more complicated from there?
Okay, so what you described is exactly that. So there's such a thing as vintages. So your first validation, you have 3 vintages, and you're allowed to sell all the way backwards to that vintage. You have to prove that you protected the forest at that time. And going forward, we've sold all our vintages, so we do year by year by year. Nothing complicated about it until the Guardian came out in January saying that the VERs, verified emission reductions, that are the result of all the algorithms, are over-exaggerated, and therefore that the companies are buying overinflated avoided carbon.
I understand the article you're referring to, which basically said that RED and Vera are dreadfully overrated and not achieving anything. If I go back to days in Borneo, when I was writing about RED, it was one of the great hopes in terms of environmental destruction and climate change, and this was seen as one of the answers. And now there's a lot of people who are lining up and saying it's not.
Yeah, but the problem is the people who are lining up to say it's not are journalists. They don't know in the field. They don't even know what algorithm is. They haven't been to measure the biomass.
Right.
They don't see how the system is put together. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. It's very complicated. Some bandit showing up saying, I'm going to do a RED project. They can't do that. They need specialists.
Right.
So it's very disappointing to see that, and it's easy to talk to customers to make them lose faith and trust.
Before we go down there, now, Vera effectively validates and, for want of another way, puts a value on the rainforest, which is then traded through RED. Now, not that long ago, there were other articles being published about Wildlife Alliance and alleged human rights violations. The report came via Human Rights Watch, which is based in New York and regionally in Bangkok. But the report has not been published. Nevertheless, there have been allegations made that you are mistreating locals and that people's rights have been violated, which is a bit disturbing given that you are running an NGO. And what's more important, human rights or safeguarding a forest?
That's a dangerous question. Both. Because the standards that we are upholding, which is VCS, that's for the carbon of the forest. CCB is how much the community is benefiting and participating. So we have VCS, CCB, and SDV. We cannot sacrifice humans for the VCS. I mean, we could say we're just doing VCS.
Right. The allegations of human rights violations came out in the Cambodian media, and they were basing their stories on a report by Human Rights Watch, which has not been published, and I'm told it will be published early next year. What are they referring to?
Okay, so historical. Let me just put the historical back in. A man and a woman, Luciana Teles Chavez, and a journalist, Tim Frewer, went to the most remote part of the Cardamons, which is now very famous, Chai Arang Valley. They stayed there 6 days and asked local people what they thought of the Red Project. And of course, everybody's having a heyday because they're telling them everything they want. We're not getting the land. We're not part of the Tibet. They're not letting us go in the forest to collect non-forest products. It goes on and on all there.
I'm just wondering how much these villages know about a Red
they all
Project
knew.
anyway.
No, they all knew because there's such a thing as called, you probably know, EFPIC.
Right, you'll have to
Free and
explain
prior informed consent.
Right.
Which is a standard that came out under VCSCCB saying that any population that will be touched in any way by the Red has to know about it and be informed and give their advice. They don't always have to consent, but they have to say, I disagree because.
They must be consulted.
Absolutely. Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. So Tim Frewer did a Twitter, and I think it was December 2021, where he accused Wildlife Alliance of all sorts of things, like abusing physically and forced evictions. And that Twitter is the first public document that came out. Unfortunately, he's erased it, so we don't know what he said exactly. You might have it?
No, I'm curious as to this.
It's okay. So then that continued. Tim Frewer and Luciana Teles Chavez went together to Chayaran to talk to the people about this. And I believe it was March 2022.
18 months ago.
Right.
19 months ago.
Right. So that it all started with that. Luciana, after that, started writing allegations against us. And their first letter, I believe, was in December. I'll correct all the dates if needed. In December, she wrote the first letter to Wildlife Alliance. But the problem with their methodology is they accuse of this, without stating any location.
What were those accusations? That people were denied access to their land, that they were bullied, intimidated, were guns used, were people assaulted? What were their allegations?
That the rangers were not behaving in a calm and professional way. They didn't use those terms. And were forcing people to go to prison or forcing people to have penalties for their forest crimes following.
So what they're saying is that you were prosecuting people who did not deserve to be prosecuted.
Yeah. For them, all the people who are illegal settlers have a right to be there, even if they come from Phnom Penh.
Right.
The law says it's not the case. You're not allowed to settle inside the protected area if you're a newcomer. Of course, if you've been there since Pol Pot regime, you can have land tenures, no problem. But they were talking about lots of temporary huts coming in, paid by generals, once again, to clear the land. And once the land is cleared, then they'll put monoculture and then they'll sell it. They're giving blanket statements of overall, land evictions without even telling people in advance. Absolutely not true. We gave them all the court cases. All of the cases show that we followed the law. We gave previous notice. We took the people to the village chief. There were discussions about the existing maps. Oftentimes it's workers from Chinese sugarcane or hydropower. And when the contract's finished, they want to stay on site and, make their...
Okay, so wind forward. This was in March last year, but the allegations that were attributed to Human Rights Watch by local media came out September, I think.
Well, I have the binder. I can show you everything.
Right.
It started earlier than that. And...
this is when it hit the headlines.
Yeah. There are 6 foreign journalists who've been accusing us terribly because of the style. So you see the huts of these people. They come from other provinces. They put tents. They kill the animals, they burn the forest, and then they move to the next area.
Right.
That is not allowed under the law. But that's not a human rights abuse. So most of the allegations fell. Now we're answering, hopefully, the final letter. And Human Rights Watch is holding on to their most accusatory point, which is, and this is Chai Orang still, which is outside of the Red Project. And they're saying we are guilty of unclear boundaries for Chai Orang.
Well, I'm a little unclear on the boundaries myself right now. So we're talking about a valley which is not involved with the Red Project.
It's not in there.
But it's still under your remit.
What do you mean by under our remit?
It's part of Wildlife Alliance's area of control.
It's called Cardamom Forest Protection Program.
Right.
And it existed way before the Red Projects.
Okay.
Yeah. So that valley still has unclear boundaries for the community because, and I have to remind them, a hydropower dam was going to flood the entire valley.
Right.
Still until 2015. So the 6 villages that were going to be evicted were going to be flooded.
Right, and this was cancelled a few years back,
2015.
I believe. Right.
And once it was cancelled, the people didn't have to leave anymore. So we were asked by the government to please reestablish order. There was a huge civil unrest there. They didn't want the hydropower dam. They were boycotting the machines coming in. And Mother Nature was there. Let's not forget Alex Davidson. It was a mess. There was Tisa Vanta coming with tourists from Phnom Penh with young CNRP people. It was an absolute mess.
Right, so you're talking about, for the benefit of the listeners, you're talking about opposition politicians, you're talking about Mother Nature, which is another environmental NGO who has had an enormous ongoing conflict with the government here. And
pushing people to stop the trucks, stopping the borings, attacking the trucks even.
Right, I mean, they're pretty out there.
Yeah. Van Vorm, he was CNRP, opposition party, and he was paid by CI. And CI, before way back then, had
CI
the Territory
being
Conservation International,
right.
had their presence there. But the moment that the dam was finished, we started moving in under the requirement of the government and to reestablish order. So we did a splendid, very organized sequence of events, starting with 485 households being socioeconomically interviewed. What do you feel? You want to continue with slash and burn? Would you like another job? If we can help you to develop alternative livelihood, what would it be? And they all said, we want community-based ecotourism like our cousins now. And 80% of the women said, we don't want our children to continue slash and burn. We want them to have a regular job, so we want them to go to school. That was so touching. So that happened, and after that, we immediately started a year preparation with the villagers to start the community-based ecotourism. Based on our model, it's about investing in homestays, kayaks, tents, teaching them how to cook, hospitality, to help them attain ASEAN standards. So it was a very nice time. The governor of Kokong said, okay, well, you guys seem to be quite ready now. And she brought 100 youth from around the province. And we all trekked up to a beautiful mountain, camped there one night, ate on the fire, danced around the fire, did a lot of singing, and next day went back down.
Okay, I mean, it all sounds wonderful and good, but what I'm trying to figure out here is that you have Red and Vera. Vera has been roundly criticised for over-exaggerating, overestimating, and really not doing a sterling job when it comes to carbon credits and basically saving the environment in terms of carbon footprints.
Right.
Now, your relationship with Vera, is that still ongoing? Has that been discontinued? Because my understanding is that relationship broke down because of allegations made by Human Rights Watch that you were not respecting particularly the small-time farmers, and that they were being victimised and forced off their land. And that report still hasn't been published.
Sure.
But yet it's still in the papers.
they sent, Human Rights Watch sent their, I don't know if it was a report, but more of a complaint, on May 29 to Vera. It took only a few days for Vera to let us know that further issuance of ERs from the southern cardamoms were suspended.
Right.
And they were starting what they call a quality review that would last about 40 to 60 days. And it adds a knot into the story because their intention for this quality review is to go back to the very, very, very first independent auditor.
Right.
And answer questions.
How far back is this?
The first validation we ever had, so 2019.
Okay.
And most of the staff of this VDB were gone. They had no idea. So they turned in this quality review response. So Vera now has everything. And they promised us that when the quality review was over, we could start it.
Okay, now, have you started again?
No, because they haven't finished reviewing the quality review findings.
So when are you expecting that? Soon?
I don't know. I'm writing to them every 2 days.
Okay.
So, and if my pushing method will work, it should be within a few weeks.
How important is Vera and Red to this country and preserving what's left of the cardamons?
It's key. I have all my life in Cambodia waited for the moment where I could present to the government a system whereby they would have bigger interest keeping the forest standing than selling it out to economic land concessions. And finally, it was Red that provided this. So we had 3 Red PDDs before this one worked. And finally we started, and it yielded enough money for the communities, enough money to keep the forest standing with the rangers, and enough money to keep the government happy and keeping the forest standing. So that must continue. Okay, so Vera was behaving perfectly before. They didn't have any, they were a normal third-party auditing organization until The Guardian came out. And then they started getting scared and...
So they're reacting to allegations by Human Rights Watch which haven't been published yet, but they are making headlines. And
no, they're reacting to The Guardian.
Well, The Guardian article was quite some time ago.
January.
Right.
And then another one came out in March. They're reacting to that, and instead of standing up for their standards, they suspended the programs. And they, in my opinion, they should have stood up for their standards, which are very good. They're very strict. So now 40 Red projects are suspended, and they are coming out with a new standard as of... So the new standard came out on September 27. But those of us who are already engaged in the VCS CCB standards, we can continue for the moment.
Okay. Where does this leave you in terms of the latest allegations that human rights abuses had been committed on the periphery of the cardamons? Did this happen?
Okay, so...
What happened?
I like the sentence where you say, in the periphery of the cardamoms, because that's Chayarang. Chayarang has been really the center of accusations.
Right.
No, it's not true, because Chayarang, number one, is outside the Red Project. They so happen to be beneficiaries for revenues from the Red Project, because the PD has them part of the 29. Okay, so that's true. Backtrack for a second. Wildlife Alliance and the Cambodian government, we have worked really hard to help communities in all the southern cardamoms have clear boundaries of their community land. I'm not talking about land titles, community land. You can do your slash and burn, you can do your whatever until here. But after that, it's protected forest. And that worked really nice. So we did it for 14 communes, Luke. That's a lot of work. And we have the maps, and we have the minutes and the signatures of everything. However, Chayarang was not included because the hydropower dam was going to. So these villages were going to be evicted. It made no sense to do community land. They were going to lose everything.
Okay. We're still coming back to the original question. Were people in those villages, in those 14 communes, were they prosecuted, bullied, intimidated in regards to pilfering, theft of timber?
No, but if they did something illegal, they would respond to the law. They'd get a penalty. They'd get a...
Right. And so what I'm asking, do you have a list of prosecutions from that area?
Oh, absolutely.
How many
Oh,
prosecutions would you make?
We're talking about since 2003, right?
Well, I mean, a lot of this goes back to 2019. So,
I can give you a list of all
no,
since
that's okay.
2019.
I'm more interested in the recent allegation.
We have every single case documented by the court. We have the copies. We have all the arrest warrants. We have all the handover warrants from of the criminal to the court. We have all of the penalties were paid, all the contracts of non-reoffense. We have absolutely everything.
So what do you make of those allegations? Because it seems to me that you have a reputation for being hard and in conserving the rainforests, and prosecutions have been made, but then there seems to be this other side of the coin where people are claiming that those people who are prosecuted are victims of human rights abuses because they live in the cardamom areas. Does that make some kind of sense?
No, I don't think the people who are convicted are complaining that they had human rights abuse.
Well, this is the allegations that have come out in the newspapers lately, and I'm trying to get a bit more of a handle on it.
I'm trying to stay with what Vera says and human rights.
Right, but I'm more interested in what you say in human rights.
Okay, so in Chattarat, what's not clear is the community boundaries because it was going to be flooded. So we took action right away after the dam was canceled. Mm-hmm. That's the best we could do at the time because we're not the government. We worked on the government saying, this land must be registered. They're the only ones who are not registered. Mm-hmm. We have 3 communes and 6 villages. Okay.
What is your relationship like with the government? And in particular, Cambodia has a new government, a new Prime Minister with Hun Manet. How is the relationship and what are you expecting over the next, let's say the next year or two?
I can't answer that question because I haven't met him yet.
But you do still work with the government?
Oh, all the time, yes.
And the relationship is?
With the government or with the Prime Minister?
Well, the Prime Minister heads the government.
Right. So our relationship with Hun Sen was very good. Mm-hmm. And you will see an article, in what I'm going to show you, where I'm accused of being in bed or something like that with a corrupt dictator, Prime Minister of Cambodia. Because I'm sitting at a table with a general who is destroying Bokor Mountain. And I'm telling him, you are taking the national park. No. So, yes, we did evict them. Mm-hmm. But my photo was shown sitting with that general discussing this. So, of course, since I'm sitting with the general, I'm in bed with the corrupt Hun Sen. Long story short, I had a good relationship. Every time I needed a heavy hitter, I asked him, and he did it.
You deal directly with Hun Sen?
By letters. Very smart man.
Suwana Gortland, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.